It's like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we can finally dedicate this class to thank Hashem for the return of the living hostages, something that we've been speaking about for so long, and it's just incredible to be able to um, give thanks for that. And we can dedicate it in the merit of the return of the rest. You still need to come back, and still peace and security in Israel and for Jews around the world. Um, okay.
Amen.
Introduction story, just to get us in the mindset. So the story is told about Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was a leading rabbi in the early 1900s in the US. Two Jews, good friends, came to consult with him. Hi, Arlene. They came to talk to him. They were trying to resolve something. These two guys had both moved to the US from the shtetl. Now, those of you, some of you might know that in the early 1900s, in the US was still a 6-day work week, and many Jews who were committed to Shabbat observance had a really hard time. As soon as they informed their supervisors that they weren't planning to show up to work on Saturday, they were given a pink slip. These two guys were good friends in the shtetl, and they both came over to the US at the same time. And they had made a pact that they were going to keep Shabbat no matter what. They knew it was going to be very difficult. They were going to keep Shabbat no matter what. When they came to the US, they each settled in different states or different cities. I'm not sure exactly. And they both really worked hard on this commitment. And you can imagine it literally meant getting a new job every Monday, because every Friday they were fired from their previous job. Now, they didn't really keep up much, during this time, but after about 30 years of living in the US, they met up again. They were very excited to see each other, and they're discussing their life and its challenges. And one of them told his friend that he was very frustrated that after all of the self-sacrifice that he had for Judaism and for keeping Shabbat, none of his children stuck with Judaism. None of his children remained committed to Jewish observance. The other friend said, I'm so shocked because all of my kids were so inspired by the way of life that we lived that all of them are also committed to Jewish observance, just the way my wife and I have been. And in both of their cases, their children said, the one whose children left Jewish observance said, we don't want to live a kind of life that you had. Your life was so miserable and so difficult. You needed to get a new job every week. It was so horrible. We don't want any part of it. While the other one, his children took a very similar situation and were very inspired to this is the kind of life we want to live. So they came to consult with Rabbi Feinstein to try to make sense of this. It didn't make sense to them. And they were having this long discussion. Rabbi Feinstein later wrote about this. And it turned out in the discussion, he asked them, how was it? And what the experience was like for them, having to get a new job every week. Hi, Gail. Hi, Lorraine. The first one said that every week he would come home on Friday with his pink slip, and he would say in Yiddish, Oi, es ist schwer zu sein a Yid, which means so tough to be a Jew. Oh man, tough to be Jewish. We did it again. The other one would come home every Friday singing and dancing into his house and with his pink slip and say, "Se gut zu sein a Yid. Oh, how precious it is to be Jewish. Wouldn't give it up for anything. Even this pink slip is not going to change anything. I am so grateful and so thankful that I get to keep Shabbat." Rabbi Feinstein later wrote that he felt that this difference in attitude tremendously affected their children's experience with Judaism, naturally. The first guy, his children's experience of their father needing to get a new job every week, was miserable. Every week, their father was miserable. He lost his job again. Oh no, we're sacrificing so much to be Jewish. Whereas the other one, his children's experience was, we're so lucky we get to sacrifice for this Judaism. And it was a very, very positive spin on exactly the same situation. Why am I sharing the story? The chapter that we're going to be starting now in Tanya really talks a lot about the happiness and sadness. Now, we have been speaking about it, and in general, we know that the Tanya's approach is very much one of, we need to be happy, we need to work on being happy, we need to work on being positive. And I think that just like in the story, you could, in every single scenario, there's very good reason to be sad. There's very good reason to say, oh no, so tough. Life is so difficult. And there's also very good reason to say, I'm so lucky. This is so special. We're so lucky that we have this. And it's not about pretending that things are so easy and things are so positive, but really it's how we just choose to look at things that can really affect our experiences and obviously our family's experience with whatever it is, Judaism included, right? Judaism is hard. There's things that are very hard about being Jewish, and we don't have to even elaborate on that much in this day and age. It's not easy to be Jewish. At the same time, we're so lucky. And there's so much positivity, and there's so much it's so special to have this experience of being Jewish, and how we look at things tremendously affects what our experience is like with it. So that was just introduction story to kind of get us warmed up for this chapter. If I were to quickly recap where we're up to, we're in the section of Tanya that we're dealing with sadness, depression, and other, negative feelings that can take us down. If you remember, the first 25 chapters of Tanya gave us a roadmap to success. We spoke about our internal makeup, how to control and manage our feelings, how to generate new feelings, how to inspire ourselves to do the right thing, and what our behavioral and emotional goals should be. From chapter 26, we're now at 31. So from chapter 26, we started focusing on troubleshooting because, as they say, life happens. It's like someone says, I have enough money in the bank if I never have to buy anything new again. But of course, we always have to buy new things. And so we can't just leave it there. Meaning the Tanya kind of could have ended by chapter 25. It gave us all the basics. Chapter 26, we're starting to deal with all the nuances of things that happen as we encounter different experiences. Specifically, the last two chapters, 29 and 30, the Tanya was talking about what it considers the most negative of all emotional experiences. And that is, in Hebrew, timtum halev, dullness of the heart. The Tanya says worse than sadness, worse than depression, worse than anger is just apathy, coldness, just not feeling, like there's no life in the emotion. And the Tanya says that this has the potential to lead us down a very, very slippery slope of negativity and lack of inspiration. Because if I cannot be attuned to inspiration and to spirituality, then most likely I have indulged too much in physicality, and I need some kind of wake-up call just to kind of sensitize me again. Now, you guys probably remember that the Tanya's main method of dealing with all of this is what we called the splintering of the log. Tanya said, just like it's quoted from Kabbalah, just like when I have a log, the log doesn't ignite. I'm trying to, light my campfire, and the log doesn't ignite. So when I splinter the wood and smash it a little bit, it becomes easier for the fire to catch. Similarly, if I am finding myself completely desensitized to holiness, that means that I need some kind of smashing, so to speak. Now, this is probably the only place in Tanya, or one of the very few places in Tanya, that the Tanya really focuses on taking a, so to speak, negative approach, a harsh approach. Usually the Tanya's approach is very positive and very joyous. In this case, the Tanya says, you cannot overcome this dullness of the heart with just like all fluff and positivity. You need to have a very sharp, intense talk with yourself to kind of wake yourself up. The example, we're going to see it later in this chapter, The Tanya quotes a phrase from the sages that says, the handle for the axe comes from the forest. Meaning the sages say, if I want to chop down a tree and I have an axe typically, or at least, back in the day, if someone wanted to make an axe, the handle for the axe was a strong piece of wood. So the sages noticed, they said, look, in order to chop down a tree, I need to first go to the forest, get a piece of wood, and use that wood to chop down the tree. Meaning that sometimes to overcome negativity, a certain negative emotion, I sometimes need to actually tap into the negative emotion, not ignore it, not just gloss it over with positivity, but sometimes I need to come face to face with it, give it the harshness, so to speak, that it deserves, and then I can move on. That's mostly what we discussed in the last chapter. So last chapter, we said if I'm finding myself that I'm totally numb, I don't feel it, I can't get inspired, no matter how much I study and how much I understand, I can't get myself excited about Judaism. I need to have a talk with myself and be real and say, what is it? I'm probably indulging in so much materialism that the spirituality doesn't talk to me anymore. And when I have this very real conversation with myself and say, get over myself, get over my ego, let me see I'm not as great as I think I am. Why am I being so complacent? Typically, that shakes me up enough to help me snap out of this dullness and actually allow me to get inspired. What happens now in chapter 31 is a natural next step. Because if I say, okay, I'm trying to follow the Tanya's advice, I felt numbness, I looked myself in the mirror and had a really harsh talk with myself, and guess what? Now I'm feeling down. So, Tanya, how did you even help me? I was supposed to be positive. I was supposed to be happy in life. You just told me to have a very serious talk with myself, and I did. And now I'm feeling all upset. So, did I accomplish anything? Was it worth being like harsh and strict with myself if it's going to lead me to feel sad? So this is what the Tanya gets to now. And chapter 31 is really going to talk about, could I be sad without being depressed? Can I be upset without it taking over me and taking me down? Like, can I look at myself and say, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Shape up. And not want to just, climb under my blanket and say, forget it, I give up, this is too much, I'm such a horrible person, I don't even want to try. An example that I heard about this that I thought is interesting, it's like, let's say someone is in a relationship that fails and they have a really, really devastating, fallout. Now, their feelings are very, very hurt, and they say, forget it, I'm just going to shut down my feelings. I don't want to be hurt ever again. I don't want to think about these hurt feelings. I just need to just lock it up. I need to just become numb. I'm just going to be a very happy, friendly, bubbly person, but I'm not really going to allow anyone to get very close to me emotionally again because I can't deal with being hurt. What would be the problem with this attitude?
You're shutting yourself off from love. You're shutting yourself off from any emotions because you can't say, I'm not going to feel this, because emotions come from the same pot.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Harriet. Yeah, if I decide that I'm completely going to shut out all emotion, then I'm not opening myself up to new positive emotion. I'm just kind of shutting down all emotion. The Tanya is telling me that I cannot ignore feelings. I cannot say, although I want to live life very positively and very happily and with a lot of joy, I cannot eliminate any negative feelings from my life because I'm just going to be a callous person. I need to be able to experience sadness without it turning into depression. And where the Tanya differentiates this, the Tanya actually calls it the difference between atzvut and merirut, the difference between sadness and bitterness. The Tanya says sadness, or what we think of as like depression, is when it's focused on me. And I say, oh, I'm such a horrible person. I did so much bad stuff, and it just takes me down. Bitterness, on the other hand, that's the term that the Tanya uses, is when I'm focused on the action. Like, that was not good. I am really upset that I did A, B, and C. But it's not focused on me, so it doesn't drag me down. It's focused on the action and on correcting it. So there is room for the type of sadness that's focused on action that will lead me to change my actions. There is no room, says the Tanya, for sadness that's focused on me that just drags me down this slippery slope of feeling bad. And then, what do we do when we feel all bad about ourselves? We just indulge in more, and then I'm not worth it, and it's not worth anything. And we just, it kind of never leads us to do anything positive. The only sadness there's room for is this type of sadness that Tanya calls bitterness, which specifically is to be upset about specific actions. And it needs to be fast and quick. We've mentioned this before. It's like when I'm focused on it and I say I'm really upset that I did A, B, and C. It was wrong for, these and these reasons, and I'm going to fix it by doing so and so. And then it needs to switch over to happiness. Because once I realize what the mistake was, I figured out how I'm going to do it differently now. Now it needs to lead me to joy. I've solved the problem. I am ready to move on and start fresh. And if I want to know what the litmus test to know is the sadness that I'm experiencing, good sadness or bad sadness, the Tanya says, we'll see what it leads you to afterwards. If the sadness that you're experiencing is making you say, forget it, it's all not worth it, can't do any of it, then that's not good sadness. But if the sadness that you're experiencing is a kind of sadness that says, I'm really upset that I did it that way, I want to do it better next time. I am going to make a commitment to do things differently in the future. That's an okay sadness. Like, it's okay, and it's a positive thing to experience that kind of sadness or bitterness, so to speak, if it's going to lead me to change. And that's what this chapter is focused on, really differentiating between good sadness and bad sadness, and then the focus on ultimately it has to lead to true joy. Yes, I'll take questions and then we'll read it inside. Go ahead, Arlene.
So it seems that this is focusing on sadness that you have caused, that you have brought upon yourself or through your own actions. But then does it not focus on the sadness or bitterness you feel about things that have happened to you, been done to you?
No, that's not, you're right. The chapter is not focused on that. The chapter is very much focused on, right, how do I be the best version of myself? And we've established very clearly in chapter 26 that you can't succeed at this game of life by being sad. We need to be positive. The energy needs to be a positive one. So then in every chapter, we're like, well, what if, bad things are happening to me, right? We spent a lot of time on that one. What if I've done a bunch of bad things and I feel like a horrible person? So now we're in the section where the Tanya says, is there ever a time that I could be upset with things that I did, that I could look in the mirror and say, yeah, that was horrible. I've done some horrible things in my life. Tanya says, yes, there is room for that. If the focus is, like we said, on understanding what I did wrong, figuring out how I'm going to fix it, and resolving to change for the future, which really, that's what teshuva is, right? Really regretting what I did and deciding to change for the future. But if it's just sadness, sometimes people feel that being sad could be like holy, like done so many horrible things, like almost like if I don't sit here and feel horrible about all the horrible things that I did, whether in the recent past or in the far past, then I can't be a good person. It's like, what Jewish guilt sometimes we think is like holy guilt. If it just drags me down, it's not holy guilt. It's only holy if it actually is focused, short, and leads to change. Does that answer your question? Okay, so let's read some of this inside. Chapter 31. I'm going to share my screen, the beginning of the chapter. It's a pretty long chapter. I don't know if we'll get through all of it, but let's try. Let's see how much of it we can get
Wait,
through.
Deanie,
Yeah.
I know I'm driving, but Arlene was asking about stuff that happens to us that drags us down, as opposed to things that we do to kind of screw up. And
Right.
is it the same answer? Because you answered the what we do.
So what I answered that this chapter is very much focused on sadness at my own actions, self-directed sadness. The sadness about things that happen to us, that's something that was addressed a few chapters ago. I believe it might be addressed again in the future, but that's not the focus of this chapter. The focus of this chapter is like guilt, like, is there room for feeling guilty? Is there room for feeling down that I messed up? And the Tanya is really saying that if I never feel guilty for messing up, if I never look in the mirror and say, you haven't done such a great job, it's going to lead me to just being numb and callous. I can't be authentic if I'm not ready to look at myself and say, this is where you messed up. But then again, I need to do it in a way that it's not going to drag me down. That's not going to make me all depressed and be like, oh, I just read a list of all the things I did wrong. Now I feel horrible about myself. So the Tanya says it needs to be approached very carefully. Does that answer your question? Lorraine, I'm assuming we're good. I guess you're driving.
I was just trying to get her question. I don't have a question, but I was listening. I'm almost home and it'll be a lot easier, but
Okay.
it seemed like you answered a different question than was asked, and I was focused on what was asked about when really bad things happen to us and those things drag us down rather than us making a decision to do or not to do something and that drags us down. It
So,
seemed like that's what Arlene was asking.
Arlene, you want to clarify?
Yeah, what I really was asking was, is the focus of this chapter going to be that which we have done and how we treat ourselves about the acts that we've done that we feel guilty or sorry about? Yeah, I that was pretty much wanting to know if that's what we were going to be focusing on. And yes, that's what this chapter is focusing on. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So the chapter begins like this. Even if dwelling long and deeply about the above mentioned matters for an hour or two, to be of lowly spirit and contrite of heart leads one to profound depression. Now, I'll remind us that Tanya mentions depression as in deep sadness, not clinical depression. Let him not be perturbed, meaning if thinking about the things you did wrong makes you sad, don't be upset. It's okay. As long as, Tanya will clarify, it's a healthy kind of sadness, not an unhealthy kind of sadness. And it's going to explain, true, sadness derives from the realm of klipat noga, not from holiness. So being sad is not a holy thing. However, I'm going to skip ahead here. Any depression then that comes from the realm of klipat noga, any depression then comes from klipat noga. Sadness is going to come from the negative side, except if the depression is due to spiritual matters arising from one's realization of his spiritual failings, then it stems from the good contained within the klipat noga. There is room for a good sadness. If the sadness is about things that I have done wrong in an effort to fix them, then it's an okay sadness. And I'm going to go to this paragraph for this reason, that the Arizal writes that even worry over one's sin is appropriate only during confession, but not during prayer and Torah study. These must be conducted with joy and deriving exclusively from the realm of holiness, as opposed to frivolity and the like. So the Arizal says, and this is what's quoted here in the Tanya, that there's a time to be sad, there's a time to be happy. If I'm focusing on the sins that I did and trying to figure out which mistakes I did, there's room for sadness at that time. If I'm trying to pray and study Torah and celebrate the holidays, this is not room for sadness. Now I need to focus on happiness, meaning that the sadness needs to be directly tied to things that I've done. This is precisely the method of humbling the Sitra Achra through something of its own species. This is what we mentioned before. The Sitra Achra is most effectively attacked utilizing the good contained within it as a weapon against itself. As our sages expressed, from the forest itself comes the handle for the axe, which fells the forest. And in a similar vein, he encountered one of his own kind. Meaning, practically speaking, in order for me to overcome the negativity, I need an ounce of negativity to help me battle the negativity. So if I did things that are bad and I messed up, I need a little bit of that bitterness to be able to understand what I did wrong and to be able to then propel me forward. Of this sadness resulting from contemplation of one's spiritual state, it is written, in every sadness there will be profit. I believe King Solomon said this. The profit lies in the joy which follows a sadness, as will be explained later, in the way the sadness itself leads to joy. Meaning, the sadness is a good sadness if then it leads to joy. If I'm able to focus and say, did something wrong, I'm really sad about it, I'm going to fix things up, and then I can close the book and say, great, I am ready to move on. Now I can be happy and I can be joyous because I've resolved this thing that I did. Then it's an okay sadness. In truth, however, the state of being contrite of heart and bitter of soul, meaning remorseful over one's remoteness from God and over the fact that one's soul is closed in the Sitra Achra, can by no means be described in the Holy Tongue by the term atzvut. So this is where it's going to differentiate between atzvut, sadness, and merirut, bitterness. For atzvut means that one's heart is dull as a stone, and there is no vitality, arousal of feeling in his heart. The way the Tanya describes sad, like real sadness and depression, which it describes as the worst possible feeling, is heaviness, is that feeling of like just being dragged down. That the Tanya says that's the sadness that's not okay. But bitterness, merirut, and contrition, is that how we pronounce it? Contrition? Are just the opposite, since the very fact that one is moved to be embittered is itself a sign of life. Okay, meaning, like we said before, if I don't allow myself to experience any negative emotion, then I'm numb, I'm dull. My heart is dull, it's not feeling. The fact that I can experience a certain level of bitterness over the things that I did shows that I'm alive and I can own it, but then I need to be ready to move on. Yes, Sarah.
Just a quick point of clarification. Is this supposed to be a bitterness or sadness? Are these emotions that are happening in real time as we are doing the messing up, or sort of reflection on prior, like on past deeds?
That's a very good question. It seems that it's reflection on past deeds. It's when someone is, again, sitting at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, and reflecting on what they've done in the past. And actually, it's going to say something very interesting. It's going to quote here, actually, right here, I'm going to paraphrase. The Tanya is going to quote that it said that a person needs to always be a master of accounts. It's called marei de chushbana. A person should always be a master of accounts, like an accountant, always kind of managing. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And the Tanya explains that that term always doesn't mean always constant. It doesn't, I cannot be going through my day when I'm supposed to be joyous, be thinking, oh, I did this right, I did this wrong. Like I can't really be happy sitting at my Shabbat meal or my holiday meal and be like being an accountant about everything that I've done. So the Tanya is going to explain that always means at set times. I need a set times, and we've mentioned this many times before in this class, that a person needs to be on top of their actions. We always need to be, reflecting but we need to set times for reflection. So there are times that we can sit and reflect, and we said traditionally those times are, the daily reflection would be in the evening before we say the Shema and we go to sleep at night. The weekly reflection would be on a Thursday night. Monthly reflection would be before Rosh Chodesh, and obviously the yearly reflection is before Rosh Hashanah comes around. It means that I need to set times where I am reflecting. And then the Tanya says something very interesting, and Gail, I'll get to your question right after that. The Tanya also says that if I find myself feeling down for other reasons, like let's say something happened and it just took me down, like I'm really upset, something happened and whatever it is, right now I'm finding myself in a bad mood. It actually would be wise to utilize my already negative mood to say, you know what? Let me use this for good. Let me sit now and do a little reflection of the things that I haven't done right so that I can kind of utilize that, take advantage of the fact that I'm already, not so happy right now. But then I need to be able to flip it over and become happy. Because again, if the type of sadness that Tanya is describing is a very focused sadness. It's like an accountant that says, oh, there's a minus in the bank. Like we overdrafted this account. All right. What am I going to do to fix it? I'm going to pull from here. I'm going to change this. I'm going to cancel that. All right, great. We resolved it. Now we can close the books and move on. That's what the Tanya says should be my attitude in this, bitterness. I find myself in like a bad mood. It's like, okay, you know what? Let me sit and reflect what's been going on the last week, the last month, the last year. How am I going to fix that? All right. Now I can experience joy because I have just fixed the page in my accounting book. Gail, go ahead. I saw you have a question.
I had two questions.
Sure.
One, maybe it would need Harriet to answer, I don't know. But I'm wondering, you talked about a sadness that just drags you down and it's so heavy. And I'm wondering, what is the difference between that and a clinical depression? And then the other question I had was, does this apply to someone who's done something really, really horrible, like abused someone or killed someone? Should they just reflect on it and go on and be happy? You know,
Um,
I had.
okay, so the question about how to figure out if something is just a general sadness or a clinical depression, I'm going to leave that up to one of our, I know we have a few mental health professionals here, and I'm going to give them a minute to explain that. But I'm going to answer your second question first, where you said, even if someone did something really bad, should they just, think about it, reflect on it, and then move on and be happy? It sounds like, oh gosh, like Judaism doesn't expect anything of you. Just, reflect about it. I think you need to be bitter for the rest of your life. You're really touching upon what is teshuvah. Like, what does it mean to really repent for something that someone did wrong? So the answer is no. It's not just, think about it, reflect on it, and like, boom, you're ready to move on. What teshuvah requires is a real reflection, a deep reflection where someone really understands what it is that they did, really, really regrets it, and then they work hard to repair that relationship with God. So somebody, let's say, who has, murdered, I could see them spending the rest of their life doing teshuvah for what they did. Now, but that doesn't mean that they need to be crying all day and all night their teshuvah. But real teshuvah means that they spend the rest of their life really working on fixing this relationship, their relationship with other humans, their relationship with God, and they're being a mensch. The teshuvah that Hashem accepts is return to who you're supposed to be, return to be the type of person that you're supposed to be. So I can't imagine that would happen with a very quick reflection. I definitely think that it would be a lifetime of work to overcome that kind of negativity. But I don't know if Harriet or Sarah want to just take a minute to just, how would you define if somebody is just experiencing sadness or if it's clinical depression that they need professional help for? Sarah, you want to take this one? Or Harriet?
I was waiting for Sarah, but clinical depression is different than what we're talking about. Clinical depression is a mental health diagnosis, and it has to do with the neurotransmitters in your brain. What this is talking about is more of a less chronic, less or chronic or acute depression. This is, boy, I did something horrible and I really feel bad. I walked out of the store with whatever and didn't pay the clerk, or I was mean to someone that I shouldn't have been mean. It's a different level um, of of behavior. It's like I did something and I need to acknowledge that I did it. I feel sad. I feel disappointed that I did it, and then move forward. And that by staying in that depression, that sadness, is what I think this is the chapter's talking about, is that we can get so fired in, oh, I did this horrible thing and I feel so bad, and never get past that. In this chapter, if I understand, which I may not, is saying, okay, acknowledge it. If you feel sad, use that time to think about how you can be a better person, and then flip it and say what you've learned from it and move forward.
I would add to that, Harriet, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's clinical depression, something more serious than just a sadness you could deal with on your own when it's interfering with your ability to lead a normal life. If somebody is finding that their sadness is causing them to be, chronically unable to get out of bed, unable to get up and do the things that they need to do, unable to maintain the relationships that are important to them, and it's really interfering with their ability to lead their life, that would be a red flag that tells you there's something more serious than just sadness going on here. I probably need to consult with a professional. Am I right?
Yes, good. Yeah, if it interferes with activities of daily living, if it interferes with quality of life issues, then it's more than what this chapter is talking
Right.
about.
And this chapter is talking about, just sadness. When I'm feeling sad, I'm having a bad day. I'm just, going about the day, just walking around feeling like a loser. Like, who am I anyway to sit here and have this, beautiful holiday dinner? Don't you know what I did last night? Doesn't everyone know what I did? Or I know, doesn't God know what I did a month ago? Like I'm supposed to be here now and, celebrate Rosh Hashanah or whatever it is. Like I'm such a bad Jew. I'm such a bad person. So those kind of thoughts, it's very natural for these thoughts to plague us and get in the way of, remember, the Tanya is telling us, I need to be able to be happy and positive to be able to do the right thing. I can't be making good choices if I'm feeling down. So how do I go about with happiness and being upbeat and dealing with life head on if I'm constantly being dragged down by these thoughts? And so that's kind of what the Tanya is addressing. Now, the chapter is going to continue and it's going to give us more perspective on how to like think about, this right type of sadness and what are the thoughts that I should be contemplating. And this would be a good time to bring in a parable told by the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov told a story about a king who was determined to have his daughter get married. Sounds like a Jewish king. And he felt that she was being very picky. And, she didn't want this one, she didn't want that one. She had all these issues with all the, potential guys who came up. So finally, the king says, I'm making a promise. The next person who walks in the door is the one you have to marry. That's it. You can't be single anymore. And so the next person who walks in the door, of course, happens to be a peasant, a farmer. King made a promise. It is what it is. This is what we're going to do. And the wedding is held, and the princess marries the peasant. So now what are they going to do after they get married? The king says, you're my son-in-law. I have to help you out. I definitely don't want you coming here working in my palace. I don't think you'll know what to do. So you know what? I'll give you a nice big piece of land, somewhere right near the palace, and you can farm all you want. You can, plant cucumbers, tomatoes, whatever it is. You'll have a good life. You can farm for the rest of your life peacefully. A few weeks after the wedding, the husband comes home from his day in the field, this, newly married young man, and he sees that the princess is very sad. She's crying. And he feels terrible. Like, how can I cheer her up? What can I do? So he runs out to the farm and he comes back with a bushel of tomatoes. And he says, "Here, sweetheart, look what I got for you. I picked all of these tomatoes especially for you." She looks at him and gives him a little smile, and she keeps crying. And he runs back outside and he brings her the best, most beautiful cucumbers. And he says, "Look, the absolute best cucumbers. I got these for you." And she looks at him and she says, "You're such a good man, but you're never going to understand. All you think about are cucumbers and tomatoes. That's the kind of life you've always lived, but you don't realize I was a princess before this. I mean, I lived a very fine life. I was used to, I went to the most beautiful shows and operas, and I, wore fine clothes. I went on these luxurious trips and cruises. Tomatoes, cucumbers, like, it doesn't do it for me. Like, you don't, we're not even talking the same language. If you really want to make me happy, you have to give me the kind of things that I'm used to, the kind of things that I really want, that is the way I experience happiness." And Baal Shem Tov told the story, and he says that our soul is in our body, and we go through life, our soul starts feeling frustrated. It really, really yearns for connection. And we feel like we need something, like we feel like we're in a rut, and we feel like we want to get out, and we say, "You know what? I'm gonna get a new car. That's gonna do it." And the soul says, "New car." We get the new car, we're not feeling any better. Then we say, "I know, if I only go on that vacation, if I only whatever, get that job, if I only, go on that particular trip, if I only expand the house, then I'm finally going to feel settled and happy." And it doesn't do it, right? We add the extension to the house, we go on the vacation, we get the, beautiful clothes, we splurge on the party, on the vacation, and we're still unhappy. Because our soul is saying, "Why are you giving me cucumbers and tomatoes? That's not what I want. Do you know where I come from? I'm the daughter of the king. I come from a place up there right beneath the heavenly throne. I want Torah. I want mitzvahs. I want real spirituality. Give me that, and that is what will make me happy." When we reflect on our experiences and the mistakes that we've made, this is how we can redirect our thoughts. And we could say, "Look, yes, I'm upset. I've messed up, but let me see what's really going on. What's really going on is that my soul is crying out for something else. I need to give my soul what it truly wants. Then I'll experience real happiness." The Tanya also gives a similar parable. Let's read it in the words of the Tanya.
Deanie, can I say something really quickly
Yes,
before you
sure
go on
thing.
to the next parable? So it's really fascinating that you just gave that example, because I have two volunteers that work this program with me. And tonight, when we finish a book, which is months and months and months and months, one of the women that is maybe 80, she opens up her home and we have a pizza party movie night, and we just go all out. And that's why I'm late, is because I had to help clean up. But I was talking to these two older volunteers, a gentleman and this woman, And they said, you know, I feel like I get more out of these events when I give than even the residents at High do. And I said, well, of course you do, because you just did a mitzvot. Like you just did a mitzvah. You opened your home. You did all this beautiful, like she spent all day decorating with little pumpkins and like the whole house was like a little magical land. And they don't, have things like that. And I don't know, it was fabulous. And like I literally just said what you said to her. And I said, we don't often get to really make someone's day that doesn't have our same reality. And these lovely people that we get to do this program for, they live a tiny little life. And so going to her house and having it all magical is like a huge deal for them. Like they had been talking about it for weeks. And she felt it. She felt anyway, it's exactly what you just said. Like,
Wow.
she felt the connection that this is what she goes, this made my day more than it made theirs. And I'm like, exactly. So it's just what you were saying.
Yeah, sometimes we get lost. We're surrounded by so much materialism that we forget what it is that we truly want, or we get, we're not focused. So when a person is going through this, feeling sad, right? Let's direct the sadness. So let him say to his heart, indeed, without a doubt, I am far removed, utterly remote from God. Now, I am acting in a way that's despicable, contemptible, and so on. Yeah, I've done all these horrible things. But all of this is only true of me. That's my body and the animal soul inside of it. But within me, there's a princess inside me. There is the part of God which is present even in the most worthless of fellows. So that even if I am no better than he, even if I'm just been acting like a farmer, right? I have this part of God inside of me, the divine soul, and the spark of godliness that's clothed inside of it. It is only my body and my animal soul that are in this lowly state. My godly soul, my divine soul is exiled within them. If so, on the contrary, the more far removed I am from God, the more despicable and contemptible, okay, sorry, this is not the parable I was thinking about, the deeper in exile my divine soul is and is to be pitied. A person needs to reflect on himself and say, oh, you know what I just did? I just dragged the princess into this farm life. And I've been doing all these things, and my soul is crying out. It just wants to live a princess life. But let me realize that it's not such a big deal. As long as I refocus and realize what the princess truly wants, and I start giving my princess, my godly soul, what it truly wants, and I engage in Torah and mitzvahs, I can fix it all. I don't have to remain in this sadness and bitterness. Yeah, I messed up. We all mess up. We made a lot of mistakes. But when I reflect on the real reality here, I can fix this. I can, give the princess what she truly wants. There's another place, I believe it's quoted somewhere in this chapter, where the Tanya says the example for my godly soul in a body is like a princess in a serpent skin. It's like take a princess and stick her in this serpent skin, right? All the sadness that I'm feeling over everything I messed up is just because I'm stuck in the serpent skin. When I realize who I truly am and what I truly want, and then I could realign with what God wants me to do, that bitterness is going to be gone in no time. The bitterness served a purpose. It served a purpose of making me realize, oh gosh, I really dragged this princess in the mud. But once I realize that and I decide to fix it, we'll be good in no time. And then I'll be so happy. I can rejoice. That's it. The princess is on the right path. Now you might say, and this I found so fascinating, especially in light of, what we all experienced recently with the hostages. The Tanya says, 1 second. You're telling me that, let's say the princess is living this farm life or in the serpent skin. And now I say, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to, take her to, the opera and all those things that the princess wants, but I haven't done it yet. Like, she's still living this very peasant life. It's gonna take time for me to get the princess to where she really should be. How can I rejoice already? Meaning, if I'm sitting here and I'm reflecting on the things that I've done, and I say, okay, I messed up, I'm going to fix things for the future, can I already be happy, or do I need to wait until the future when I finish fixing things? Tanya says, of course I can start rejoicing. So long as I move myself onto the right path and I know I'm going in the right direction, then I can already rejoice. I already made the plan of how I'm going to get the princess back to the kind of life she wants. I can already rejoice. And the example that the Tanya gives is, and this is what you'll see in a moment why I found it so relevant. It says, it's like, imagine there's a prince who's taken captive, and the prince's captors make him do really, really dirty work. And the prince is covered with dust. And finally, hostages are released, captive comes home. Now, the prince is coming back to his parents. Will you say, oh no, the prince can't hug his parents. He's covered in dust. Wait, we have to clean him up. He's not ready to hug his parents yet. Let's wash him up. Let's clean him up. Let's, give him a haircut. Let's make him ready to meet his parents. Or will his parents happily hug him with all the dust? Of course, there's time for haircuts and baths later. They're so happy that he's home. They will hug him exactly as he is. They'll already celebrate. And then, over time, God willing, he'll get back to himself. And this was so, relevant, seeing all the images coming out of the hostages coming home. And, we're seeing these pictures and unfortunately what they've been through and what they look like. And you think like, wait, should we rejoice or should we just cry at how they look? Some of these hostages, they've lost so much body mass. You see that they've been beaten and tortured. How can we rejoice that they're coming home? But this is like, this is where I found the relevance. Tanya says, of course you can rejoice. Rejoice. They're home. Their parents can hug them. It's okay. There'll be time to heal. There'll be time to get all the medical treatment that they need, and they'll get the haircuts, and they'll eat again, and they'll gain the weight that they need, and God willing, they'll be okay. You could, as soon as they're just in the right place, heading in the right direction, you already can rejoice. And the same is true when I reflect on those things that I did. And again, I'm feeling bad about, gosh, what did I do to my princess? But as soon as I make the decision to fix things and I make that commitment to change things, I can already rejoice. And that's how it's a bitterness that leads to happiness. It's not a bitterness that makes me sad about, as soon as I realize what I did wrong and I commit to fixing it, the joy can already start. I'm just going to read that part inside because I see we're hitting 9 o'clock. Surely there's no great joy as that of being released from exile and captivity. It is comparable to the joy of a prince who was taken captive and was subjected to hard labor of turning the millstone in prison, which was, considered the most torturous thing that they would do to the lowly prisoners, while covered with filth, and who then goes free to the house of his father the king. Such a prince, descended from the supreme king, is the soul, and by means of Torah mitzvah, it is redeemed from captivity and degradation imposed on it by the body. So, in short, what we've said until now is that there is room for a sadness, and the type of sadness is that there's room for and is encouraged is what the Tanya calls bitterness. It's that sadness of realizing, oh my goodness, how far did I go? Look how I messed up. But it then leads me to say, here's how I'm going to fix it. And once I make that commitment to fixing it, I already can begin rejoicing. If the sadness is one that causes me to continuously and perpetually feel sad, oh, so difficult to be Jewish, so hard, I'm such a horrible person, how can I possibly, then I know it was a misplaced sadness. It wasn't the type of sadness. Thoughts or questions? We're still in the middle of the chapter, but I don't want to go over time. There's another little detail that I'll mention now, but we'll go into it more in detail next time. The Tanya says, when I get to that place, when the farmer realizes oh, this is what my wife needs to be happy, it is very important at that moment to quickly and swiftly make the decision to change. Because if I don't make the decision very swiftly, then I could get stuck in this life. It's like if let's say the farmer, we keep talking about the farmer, but we can see it let's say in any relationship. I'm in a relationship and the relationship's been going on for a while, and I suddenly realize what it is that I've been doing that's really been making my partner unhappy. Like we finally got to it. So now there's that moment of inspiration where I say, oh, that's what I've been doing wrong. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to change it. If I don't take action to change it right away, the natural way of life is that I'm going to keep doing what I've always done. Like I'll say, oh yeah, I really should change that. And then the next day, I'm again doing what I've always done. Because it's very hard to change a habit that you've fallen into. So as soon as I get to the place where I realize what it is that I did wrong, I really need to quickly make very firm commitments that I'm going to stick to. And this is actually, in Hasidic circles, we call it a hachlata, which is really a Hebrew word, which means make a decision. Like in the moment of inspiration where I say, yeah, I want to be more Jewishly committed. I want to give my kids more Judaism. It's like, okay, let's decide. I'm going to, number one, do this, every Friday I'm going to light candles at the right time. Number two, I am going to, I don't know, say the Moda'ani with my children out loud every day. Number three, I'm going to, make these concrete decisions, because that's what's going to help you maintain the inspiration. If you don't make those very concrete decisions, you're going to fall back into your old ways. And so then the bitterness almost wasn't worth it. I was like, I was bitter about it. I decided I'm going to change it. And what do you know? I'm doing the same old thing tomorrow. And the second half of the chapter is going to talk a little more about that, about how we make those swift decisions and how we kind of cash in on those moments of inspiration after the bitterness to say, all right, let me make a list of what I'm going to do different. Happy to answer any questions or comments. Otherwise, we will pause here and we'll continue next week. Anyone have something to share, ask? All right, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you all on next Monday.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jeannie.
Bye-bye.